Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Shiri, a Korean action romance movie from 1999 that stars Han Suk-kyu, Kim Yoon-jin, Kang-ho and Choi Min-sik. In October of 1992, an elite group of North Korean soldiers are put through a brutal training program. Under the leadership of their commander, played by Choi Min-sik, they will be sent into South Korea as sleeper agents to be reactivated at a later time. The most promising of the group is Lee Bang-hee, played by Kim Yoon-jin, a female sniper who assassinates several key Korean figures over the next 6 years. Two South Korean agents, played by Han Suk-kyu and Kang-ho, are attempting to stop her, but they have no idea that these sleeper agents are about to steal a cutting-edge liquid explosive for the purpose of executing a terrorist attack. Now, my first experiences with Shiri are actually rather memorable. This is the first Korean movie I ever saw, and the discussions on message boards back in the mid-2000s were actually kind of mixed. A number of people thought this movie was somewhat overrated compared to other high-profile Korean movies from the turn of the century. The main reason for this opinion is the plot itself. If you think about the plot, how many times have we seen a movie about terrorists who steal a dangerous weapon, or who attempt to steal a dangerous weapon? There's a lot of them out there, folks. And this is essentially South Korea attempting to prove that they could do a Hollywood-style action blockbuster. So, Shiri does not have as much artistic sensibility or creativity as something like Oldboy, right? However, when I first watched this movie, I found it to be quite different from your typical American action film for two key reasons. First of all, it explores the relationship between North and South Korea, and it does this without demonizing all North Koreans. I found this to be pretty interesting. There's actually one North Korean character in this movie who is very likable. And even though the sleeper group of assassins was created in North Korea, they are planning to strike leaders of both countries because they feel like the politics between these nations is just like a dog and pony show, so to speak. There's no real intention or urgency over a possible reunification of the two nations. So, pretty interesting stuff. And this is the first time I had seen this particular geopolitical relationship explored in a movie. The second thing that makes Shiri different from your typical American action flick is the romance element. It's a rarity when an action movie leans into the romance as much as this one does. In a lot of American action flicks, the romance usually feels like it's tacked on. We need let's put a love interest in here. You know what I mean? And it's usually not given much development. Not the case for Shiri. The romantic relationship is a key foundation for the story, and it gives the film a lot of its emotional weight. I do think the ending, in particular, has some impact to it, so that's good. So even though, the skeleton of Shiri is extremely generic, it does have some very specific qualities that set it apart from the typical action film. Now, if you were paying attention to the actors I've been mentioning, you will know that this is a big-time collaboration. At the time this movie came out, however, I wonder sometimes who was the biggest draw in cinemas. I assume it would have been Han Suk-kyu because of Christmas in August that came out the year before. Choi Min-sik and Kang-ho were just starting to find some traction in their careers, both having starred together in The Quiet Family a year before, and all three of these main actors already collaborated back in 1997 with a movie called Number 3, which is a pretty fun little gangster flick. So these guys really were kind of in the thick of things when South Korean cinema was completely kind of transforming itself into what would become one of the best film industries in the world over the past few decades. And Shiri feels kind of a necessary moment for Korean cinema. It's we can do a good, solid blockbuster action flick. And you know who else is in this movie? And this surprised me. Hwang Jung-min is in this. And, I was looking through the cast list before I watched the film again, and I saw him in the cast, and I'm I don't even remember him being in this movie. But that's because he has a very small role. and very little screen time. But if you pay attention near the end of the film, you'll be able to see him. So that was pretty interesting to see him in this. A few other observations outside of the action stuff is that two of the best acting scenes in the movie involve Choi Min-sik, and they're both shot in a single take, with the actors kind of going back and forth in a very emotional discussion. One is between Choi and Kim in her apartment, and it's very effective. And then there's a similar scene with Choi and Han. So look out for those two scenes because the actors really kind of show their stuff in there. And please look out for the oddball side character. They actually call him Oddball in the movie. And for some reason, I never really appreciated him that much during my prior viewings. But in my recent viewing, I like that character more. And I kind of get pumped up at one point when he proves to be more useful than you might expect. The dude really does kind of come through for the good guys near the end of the movie. So I like that guy. Now from what about the action? Okay. So I'm going to say this. Way too much shaky cam. Way too much shaky cam in this movie. It's just too much. Now, the fortunate thing is that the vast majority of the action consists of shootouts, gunfights, not hand-to-hand combat. All right, so you can still understand what's happening. If most of the movie was fighting and it had this much shaky cam, you would have no idea what's happening, all right, in terms of punches thrown or whatever. But with a shootout, you can still tell who's shooting, who's getting shot, but still, the shaky cam is too much in this, in my opinion. But there are still some good action moments. So, for example, the film opens with a strong scene. It's a badass military training sequence that involves actual murder and life and death fighting. It's pretty insane. It's kind of one of the highlights of the film is the opening sequence. The chase scenes are pretty good, and the quantity of action keeps things moving. I also do like the finale. It has some good suspense. It's multi-phased with multiple threats, which I always enjoy. But I do think most of the successes that the action earns is mostly due to the character work, not the actual action design, so to speak. And, it has been a while since I've rewatched this movie, but I think it still holds up. It does. Very entertaining movie, and I do recommend it. The easiest way to find it currently is on DVD. And as always, I will see you next time.